Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. So once again, we are going to meet for a new topic. Today is whether we are going to make or are we going to buy. Okay, so I'm your lecturer again, Dr Lizz from UITM Terengganu. So I hope that everybody is fine today before we start with our lesson. So are you ready? Okay, so to talk about our topic is to make or to buy. Okay, so you might be wondering, what is it? Are we going to make or to buy? Okay, so first we look at what. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. Okay, we are talking about the component. Okay, we are going to talk about the component that you use to produce your product. Assume that you have a factory. Okay, so are you going to make or are you going to buy the component that you use to produce your product? Okay, we are not talking about the product itself, but we are talking about the components. Maybe we use a few components that you need to assemble to produce a finished goods. Okay, and then this is what we are talking about, the component that you need so that you can assemble them so it will be a finished good. So we are going to consider whether we want to make this component or are we going to buy this component from the outside supplier. Okay, so as you can see, if you want to manufacture a car, these are the components that you are going to need. We will need the windshield, tires, the seats, the steering wheel, the gear, the wipers, the aircon, the pedals, and there are just so many other things that you will need in order to produce a car. Let's see. These are among the things that you are going to need: the tires, the plug, and the gear, and the doors, the engine, the tires, the steering wheel, the seat, the fan, and so many other things that you will need to have before you can assemble a car into one finished car that you can sell to your customers. So this is what we are talking about. Are we going to make this component or are we going to buy it from the outside supplier? That is the decision that we are going to make. Okay, so just in case that you are not clear about this, so I hope that you can see this. Okay, do you know that it will need about 30,000 components to make a car? You have never thought about that, right? Okay, so if you happen to read about this, then this is quite shocking actually. So these 30,000 components to make a car are including all the big things like the tires, the doors, the carburetor, the wheels, the seats and everything, and also to the tiniest, smallest parts. For example, the screws, the nuts and the bolts that you may have. So in order to produce one car, you will need about 30,000 components. It is not something small. That is why, as you can see, when Petronas was established in Malaysia, okay, so they also have contractors or suppliers to supply them with all these components. Okay, maybe they just produce the engine or something that is critical to the success of the car, the proton car, but the small parts like the tire, okay, the windscreen, the gear, the seats, they will outsource it to other companies so that the companies can operate the business by producing the components needed by Proton. So you see that Proton does not produce their components, not all of them at least. Okay, so that is what we are talking about now. We are talking about whether we want to make the component or we want to buy these components. But of course, normally we do not buy from the outside supplier the components that are critical to our success. Okay, so that will become our secret ingredient normally. Okay, so now we will see So as you can see here, that the company then may choose either to make the component or to buy a component from an outside supplier. Okay, so you can make and you can also buy. So if your decision is actually to make, to buy, then we call it outsource. Okay, so this is outsourcing. What is outsourcing? Outsourcing is actually when you decide to buy from the outside supplier. You do not produce it yourself. Because just like Proton, if they decide to produce all these components, then you can imagine how many factories do they have to set up so that they can produce all the 30,000 components that they need to assemble a car. Okay, so that is why most companies, they will outsource to the external supplier so that they can actually focus on their main activity. Okay, so why do company outsource? So as you can see, this is why company outsource, because they just let the expert do their job. You see, Proton is not a company that deals with the tires. So they are not going to focus their attention on producing the tires because they are not the factory to produce the tires. So what they do is they just outsource it to the tire manufacturing company because they are the expert at their job. And because of that, Proton can just focus on their main job, which is producing the Proton car. Okay, but they keep the critical part like producing the engine, the design of their car to themselves. This is not to be outsourced to the outside suppliers. Okay, because that is their critical success factor. That is the ingredient, the confidential information that they need to preserve, which is supposed to be confidential. Okay, so that is outsourcing. So most companies now, they outsource other unimportant parts of the business to other external suppliers, but just focus on their main expertise. Okay, now, so when you decide whether you want to make or you want to buy, then what should you do? What should the company do actually? So now what? Okay, so of course, when you want to decide whether you want to make or you want to buy, you will need to do an analysis. Yeah, this is the analysis that you are going to make. Okay, you have two choices now. Number one is your choices will be to make, and number two is you will have to decide whether you want to buy. So before you proceed with the analysis, we will need to look at this. See, if you make, we just look at this. If you decide to make, then you will have to do it all by yourself. But if you decide to buy, then it will deliver straight to you. You do not have to make it. So you have two choices. So we can see that here we will need to do an analysis to look at the cost to make and the cost to buy. So if we decide to make, then what are the possible costs that we might need to incur? Okay, so this is what we call the relevant cost of making. So you need to identify this, list all this, and look at how much is the relevant cost. Okay, relevant cost of making here could be the direct material that you need to make, the component that you need, and also it could be your direct labor cost that you need to incur, and also the variable manufacturing overhead. Okay, so this one we look at how many units do you need. For example, need to have 10,000 units and the cost is at about X ringgit per unit. So you just time, then you will get the amount. So the same thing will happen to the other costs like variable manufacturing overhead, direct labor costs. Okay, and then also we might have other costs that are related, even the fixed costs. Okay, so we have the specific fixed costs that might be related to the cost of making. So if they are relevant, then you need to include it here. So other than that, we also have the opportunity costs. Okay, these opportunity costs are the costs that you might need to incur, because it's not the cost that you incur, it is the benefit that you might need to let go. Is the benefit that you might need to sacrifice because you want to make the component. Okay, so we look at the opportunity cost. How much is the opportunity cost? So that is why normally question will always ask you to calculate the opportunity cost. That's why when you read the question, you need to identify which information given by the question is pertaining to the opportunity cost. Normally because of you need to let go some of the manufacturing of certain product because you want to make way for the production of the special order. So you just read the question carefully, then you will see. Okay, so you total up all the costs here, then you can see that this is the relevant cost of making. Okay, so you get one total. But always remember, class, here we are talking about relevant costs. Okay, meaning that only the costs that are relevant to making of the component will be included here. So you need to remember what are the characteristics of the relevant costs. Okay, it must differ between alternative, it must be the future costs, or else if they are not relevant, then please do not include it here. So that is why you must be clear about the relevant cost concept. Alright, so now why not we look at the cost of buying. Okay, so here on the other side, what you need to do is you need to calculate this, the relevant cost of buying, because we need to consider this. Okay, so this is the relevant cost of buying. So what can they be? Of course, it is very obvious. I think that one of the relevant costs of buying is, of course, the purchasing cost. Okay, the purchasing cost that you have to incur so that you can buy the product. And then after that, we have, and then after that, we will also need to look at what are other costs that you need to incur if you buy. For example, is the delivery cost. Do you need to incur this delivery cost because you are buying the product? And what about the insurance cost, for example? Okay, some of the question also include that if you buy the product, then you don't have to incur some fixed costs. You can save certain fixed costs because of you don't make the product. Okay, so for that kind of question, then we will have here what we call the cost saving. Okay, so we will have the cost saving. Why? Because you buy. If you produce, then you will need to incur that cost. But if you buy, then you can save that cost. So that will be your cost saving. So if there is any cost saving, then you are going to minus it here. Okay, so you read the question carefully, identify whatever are the relevant costs if you buy the component, then after that you total up. And here we are going to have the relevant cost of buying. Okay, so once you have already got this, so what we are going to do right now is that we are going to compare. So now is your decision time. So you will need to compare these two, relevant cost of making and relevant cost of buying. Okay, so you compare which one is higher. If your relevant cost of making is higher than relevant cost of buying, okay, higher than relevant cost of buying, then your decision will of course be to buy. Why? Because it will save the cost by how much? Okay. However, if your relevant cost of making is less than relevant cost of buying, then your decision here will be to make. So don't forget to make this decision. All right. Okay, so I think this is what you need to know about the analysis of making or buying. So this is what you do before you can make a decision whether you want to make or you want to buy. Okay, for that we will see you again in the next video on the illustration of make or buy. Okay, so please practice with the question. So until then, thank you so much. I hope that you enjoy the video and you can understand what I'm trying to say here. Okay, goodbye then.